Okay, so this was our first game against DK at the main event. DK was probably one of the most respected teams, and we were surprised that they didn't really finish top 2, and we thought that they would do much better than they did. I mean, 4th isn't that bad, but they're definitely one of our biggest opponents, but generally in scrims, and I think we kind of had their number, and I think they were a little bit scared of us to an extent. But anyways, in this first game, we had a pretty creative strategy we wanted to try on Dire, which involved using Enchantress and Roshan, or Enchantress and Ursa together as the 2 supports in order to get a bunch of Roshan kills, especially early on. This is something we basically stole from Alliance. They used Wisp and Ursa with like a similar fashion, and then Fnatic actually used it against Newbee during the group stage and beat Newbee with our strategy, and that's the team that we practiced this against in a scrims. We practiced it against Fnatic, and they just kind of stole it, but you know, it's all fair, I guess. So anyways, this game, they had Radiant first pick, we had Dire second pick. They banned Enigma just because Zai's Enigma was like, it just won us games over and over. Lycan was banned obviously because they had first pick. They banned Panda, which was a little surprising. We weren't really expecting that. Panda was one of the heroes that we were worried about them picking, so that was a nice, that was very nice for us. We were very pleased that they banned Panda. We ended up banning Skywrath because Skywrath has a ton of movement speed thanks to the 6.81 patch, and he is very good at roaming, and he's very good at contesting Roshan early on because of his high amount of damage and movement speed. So that was one thing that we were trying to eliminate in this game, is their ability to defend Roshan. So that way we could just use the Roshan advantage in order to win late game, or hope, or ideally win early game. This game kind of went really late, but that's just sometimes how Dota goes. So they first picked Rasta, which is pretty familiar for this tournament. It's nothing too out of the question. And we wanted to save our Enchantress and Ursa picks for the second phase, so that way it would kind of catch them off guard and we didn't reveal all of our cards at the beginning. So I think in this first phase we went with Razor and Tide, who are incredibly strong laners. They can, they don't mind having heroes in their lane. They can solo, and they're generally very good just in 1v1 situations, or even against like multiple heroes. Also, these heroes, if we're roshing with Enchantress and Ursa and they try to contest us, Razor and Tide are incredibly good around the Rosh pit, especially early on when people don't have too many levels or too many items. And they decided to pick Death Prophet, which is kind of what people are generally picking in this tournament against Razor, because you don't really need to go, or you don't have to depend on your attack damage, and you can stay pretty far away and just nuke with your Carrion Swarm, I believe is what it's called, and you can get CS and bottle Crow, and just kind of like, the lane is pretty even. Death Prophet is one of the heroes that does very well against Razor. So in the second banning phase, they banned Storm Spirit. That's a respect ban for Mason. Just Mason plays an amazing Storm. We banned the Juggernaut because, once again, Juggernaut is, they ran a support Juggernaut on LAN-M frequently throughout this tournament, and that hero would have been very good at running into Roshan pit and just like spinning down our heroes. It's not the best against Ursa, but it's pretty good against Enchantress. Juggernaut doesn't really have to attack, and he's immune to magic when he's spinning, so he can attack through it if his attack speed's high enough, and he can also burst down Enchantress and her allies with Omni Slash. Their next man is Wraith King. That's just another hero we played a lot. I think they maybe were worried about it a little bit. Our next man was Void. We banned this because a lot of Chinese teams like to do Death Prophet and Void together. Just the ability to have the Chronosphere on top of the Death Prophet ultimate is a ton of damage, and it's really hard to fight up against. Also, our lineup didn't give us much lockdown, so having a hero that could jump away like Void could be really problematic for just like the split push and kind of rat Dota game. So we went with Ursa first in this phase. We were a little worried about them maybe picking Enchantress because they do play it. But we figured if we first picked, the thing is they also play Ursa, so we decided that we were much more confident picking Ursa, and Ursa's pretty good against Enchantress, so if they did decide to take Enchantress, we would just kind of put Mason on Enchantress and let him play in the safe lane, and we would kind of throw away the whole like Enchantress Ursa early Roshan strategy. Lucky for us, they did not take Enchantress. I think let's see what they took. They took Invoker for Ice Ice Ice, and this pick was kind of surprising. We weren't really expecting this, and we weren't exactly sure why they picked this, but either way, we were still really happy that they did. And I think Invoker did a lot this game, but he probably wasn't the best pick for this game, in my opinion. Then we took Enchantress. It was perfect. We were lined up, and this was kind of like a surprise pick because we never play junglers. The only junglers that we play are Enigma, and when we picked Enchantress, I think a lot of people kind of had this huge question mark. They didn't really understand why we picked it, or were kind of maybe like a little nervous for us because we just don't run that, and they were kind of maybe worried that we were getting away from what we're used to. So after the Enchantress pick, they at this point they realized that we don't have that much lockdown. Our only stun is Tide Hunter, and they can just abuse high mobility heroes, which is what their last pick is going to be. This pick, they took Treant Protector, another really surprising pick. I didn't really expect it. It's not that bad with Rasta. Rasta kind of has like a weak early laning phase, and Tree has a really strong laning phase, so it's good in that regard. Tree is also pretty good against teams like ours, where we don't have any really strong tower push. We have Enchantress who can pick up a couple creeps, but if we don't finish off the tower, then Tree's just going to heal it back up. So because we like tower push, that's probably why they picked Treant, and it worked out pretty well for them. It was a pretty strong pick. So our last ban was pretty, in hindsight, this was a really bad ban by me. I really did need to ban Weaver because, like I said before, we didn't have any lockdown. And instead I banned Furion because I was also worried about that split push. But the thing is, with Furion, we probably could have caught him and maybe killed him with Ursa. And you just can't do the same thing with Weaver. So we took Mirana as our last pick, and this was because we needed another solo hero for Mason that he was confident with, and also a hero that could solo any lane. Even if they like aggressive tri-lane, Mirana would still be okay up there alone, or if they did dual lanes or something like that, Mirana could still fend off on her own and not die, while Enchantress and Ursa were doing Roshan and trying to make stuff happen on the map. And then their last pick was Weaver. And this was a really good pick for them because we lacked the lockdown to kill him. But the way our strategy worked is all the Roshans just piled up, and there just wasn't enough for them to deal with having to fight up against an Aegis and a Cheese every team fight. Okay, so game 2 versus DK. We just beat them in a pretty intense game, so probably emotions are running a bit high for us and probably them as well. Going into this game, we were Radiant this time, so we needed to change our strategy. DK in our group stage match picked Ursa against us and really abused Roshan, and it was really tough to deal with. And we decided that the best way to play on Radiant against DK was to push really early and try and force them to defend their towers rather than us having to defend Roshan. So you'll see it in the picks this game that we tried to make things happen and kind of be the aggressors rather than the people defending towers. So we banned Panda because we wanted to push, and we knew that if they had a Panda with an early Blink Dagger, it would be really hard for us to push into. Burning plays like one of the best Pandas out there, and he actually beat us. He did a great job against us in the Summit, where we actually, when we lost game 1 in our best of 5 at the Summit against DK, his Panda was incredible, and he used it at TI quite a bit, I think, against other teams, and did really well. We banned Rasta as well, because it was a hero that we really didn't want, but we also didn't want them to have, so that way when we were trying to push into their towers, they wouldn't be able to split push with just the Rasta wards or take Roshan with just 2 heroes. They banned Enigma, just a respect ban for Zai, like usual. And their second ban was Lycan, just a normal thing. If you don't have first pick, generally teams ban Lycan. This game we first picked Razor. It's just because we were very confident in this hero, especially with Artur playing it as one of his favorite heroes this tournament, and we just didn't really lose when we had Razor, so we figured let's just get it. He can push pretty well too once he picks up an Aghanims, and he's a very strong early game hero. They took the Skywrath that we banned in game 1, and then they took Void, which we banned in phase 2 of the last game. We instantly took Furion. We knew that Furion would be a pretty high priority pick in this tournament. And we were kind of we banned it last in the last game. We were kind of surprised it didn't get picked up earlier. Furion has a lot of strength, and he allows us to push towers no matter what if we're like Radiant, and that's what our objective was. So that's why we picked him this early. So for the next couple of bans, we needed to basically just eliminate their ability to split push and trade towers and force them to fight into us. So I think I banned We banned Death Prophet for his ultimate. They banned Jakiro because they're starting to worry about the push. And then we banned Tinker, who could defend our pushes pretty well and is also pretty strong with Void. They banned a Venomancer. I think that was more of like a Mason respect ban, but once again, they're just worried about the push and they're just worried about this Void coming online early enough to defend. So this pick was very unexpected, and that's generally what DK does. They were very good about playing a lot of heroes and being very unpredictable. They picked Wind Ranger because they wanted the matchup against Razor mid. Wind Ranger does pretty well. The Wind vulnerability allows her to get away from Razor's Link, which is generally how Razor wins his lane. So Wind Ranger in that regard is pretty good. You can also just spam for CS with Power Shot and kind of harass down Razor that way. I decided not to give them this matchup. In this game, I decided to put Razor in the safe lane because of this and just put a more even matchup mid where Wind Ranger doesn't really get to abuse the fact that she is good against Razor. So this was a pretty early Abaddon pick, and this kind of was probably a little alarming for them. This kind of revealed everything we're doing. It's just we want to fight, we want to push, we want to take towers, and we want to end the game early. That's generally where Abaddon is strongest. And Abaddon is probably one of my strongest heroes, and I think we have a very high win rate with the hero. So it's a pretty safe pick for us. It's pretty good against Void because you can shield and help heal the people that are inside the Chronosphere. You can also remove Skywrath Silence, and you can remove Shackle Shots, which are pretty deadly in the mid game. With their fourth pick, I believe they took Timbersaw. Okay, so DK takes Timbersaw fourth, and this was another big surprise pick for us. It's pretty good against Furion, and it's pretty good against Abaddon because it has a lot of AoE damage, and there's no like single target spells or abilities or like focus fire for Abaddon to like remove with the shield. But Timbersaw on Dire offlane is really tough to pull off, and when I saw this pick, I looked at all the heroes and I thought Silencer support would be incredibly good because you can just zone Timbersaw pretty easily with Glaze of Wisdom, and also in the mid game with Last Word and your ultimate, you can effectively shut down a Timbersaw pretty well. One cause for concern here is Zai actually never played Silencer in like an official match. It was generally me playing the support Silencer, but Zai's a versatile player enough so that he can pretty much play any hero in the game and be able to adapt very quickly. This was kind of the idea that I talked about earlier, where I put Dragonite mid instead of Razor mid because they wanted the Wind Ranger versus Razor matchup. That's why they picked Wind Ranger, so I just didn't give it to them. I went with DK, and I decided Mason would play the Razor in the safe lane instead. So their picks are kind of all over the place. They could still do a support Wind Ranger. They could do a core Skywrath. They could really do anything. So I wasn't exactly sure what their last pick was going to be. I knew they needed a little bit more control because they had a lot of damage through Wind Ranger, Skywrath, and Timbersaw. So I banned the Alchemist, who would provide like a pretty solid stun for them, and some pretty good deep push too as well with the Acid Spray. Their final pick is Kunkka, and Kunkka is pretty good with Void because you can set up with the boat, like you set up with the Chronosphere and then you throw the boat in right after. It's pretty good too with Skywrath because you can set up the ultimate kind of as well. And then our last pick was the Silencer for support, and like I said before, he's just pretty good against Timbersaw and Wind Ranger and Skywrath, but it turns out it worked out really well against Kunkka as well, because when Void went in with the Chronosphere, if Silencer wasn't in the Chronosphere, he was able to use his ultimate, and that way Skywrath, Timbersaw, Wind Ranger, and Kunkka couldn't follow up on the Chronosphere, so they didn't really have the damage that they needed to burst through the Chronosphere, especially with Abaddon healing up whoever Void was hitting. So for our game versus Newbee, we played against them in the group stages, and we actually handled them pretty well. They didn't really seem that strong, but Newbee didn't really pick up their game until the stage 2 or stage 3 of the tournament, where they had all the best of 3s in order to find their ways to the winner bracket. So I wasn't exactly sure if Newbee was going to beat Vici or if Vici was going to beat Newbee, so it was kind of hard for me to prepare too much like I did for DK. Also, on top of that, we only had 10 minutes in between our matches, so we went straight from our games versus DK right into these. So that was kind of stressful, and I think the drafts were pretty unprepared, but I'll do my best to try and explain them. So Newbee has first pick on Radiant. That's generally how it went for the most part, and we had second pick on Dire. We banned Lycan because they had first pick, and they banned Enigma because Zai is the best Enigma pretty much. They also banned Razor. I think they banned Razor very frequently through this tournament, like almost every game. And they just didn't like playing it, and they definitely didn't like playing against it. I banned Rasta as well, just because Rasta was kind of like a flavor pick of this tournament. They first picked Doom, and a lot of people were kind of questioning why we gave up Doom so much. And in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have given up so much, but I think the hero is definitely beatable. And I think we were very confident going into this match of our ability to beat Doom. Or even before this tournament, we knew that we could beat Doom. So forcing them to first pick a hero like Doom is really not that bad for us, at least in our opinion. So we traded Doom and we got Panda, Brewmaster, and Tidehunter. Panda is one of Mason's best heroes, so that was nice to pick up. Tide is also really great for Universe, and this gives us two incredibly strong tanky cores who could survive through a Doom, pretty easily as long as they just get out of the fight. Okay, and then with their second pick, they took Death Prophet. I think they picked Death Prophet a lot this tournament for Mu, and it was just a hero he really excelled on, and the hero's really strong in general, so it's never really too bad of a pick. They're on Radiant, so I think they definitely wanted to achieve the ability to push towers. He's also pretty good against melees, and we already had two, during laning phase, so if for some reason Death Prophet was laning against Tide or Brewmaster, he'd probably have a pretty good time. Okay, so they banned Ursa just because of what we did against DK. They were worried about losing a Roshan. We banned the Batrider to follow up with that. Batrider is one of those heroes that was pretty good at initiating before we would initiate. In hindsight, maybe not the best pick, because I think they give Doom to Xiao very frequently, rather than put it onto Hao. So that may have not been the best ban. They banned TA because, once again, they're worried about the Roshan pit and they just don't want to lose the game there. And our Artur's TA is actually very, very good. And it's actually a pretty good laner against Death Prophet as well. With our last ban in the second phase, we banned Pugna. We were just worried about the all-in push that they might bring us. So we weren't really ready to fight that. The biggest deal with Panda right now, or in this tournament, was teams were pushing before Panda was even ready to fight. And Panda only needs a blink to fight, so they're pushing at 6 to 7 minutes. And that's just, it's if they're taking towers, and if they take towers before Panda has his blink, it's really hard for Panda to be effective in the game. He kind of falls off pretty quickly if he doesn't have a really good start, and if the other team has enough items, such as a mech or a pipe or BKB or something, he's pretty much useless. We took the Sand King here. This is a pretty good pick because Zai's Sand King is really good. We also had an open jungle for him to farm. They take Shaker. Shaker is actually one of the best heroes against Sand King because he has the long range stun, which is much longer than Sand King's, and also you can kind of disrupt Sand King's ability to move around in a team fight. He can't just sit in Sandstorm because the fissure is almost always going to hit him. With our fourth pick, we took Naga Siren for our DZ. We hadn't really picked Naga too much this tournament, but it was something we always had. During our bootcamp, we had a whole day where we just only picked Naga. We would first pick it and then just play against whatever team, and they would try their best to beat it, and we had a ton of success. And we kind of questioned the idea of picking Naga because we really wanted to abuse Roshan, and that's kind of what their bans were focused around, is banning Ursa and TA so that Roshan was a little bit harder. The thought process of not picking a Roshan abusing lineup on Dire was so that we picked heroes that could defend them from for their ability to Rosh. So by picking Naga, we thought that we would be able to buy enough time because they wouldn't have the Roshans that they would if we were Radiant, and we would be able to delay long enough for Naga to get enough farm to carry the game and win alone. And eventually we'd be able to do Rosh. So basically the idea is that by denying them the Roshan advantage by being Dire, we'll be able to defend towers better and just delay the game overall. Their fourth pick was a Lich. I don't think this pick was very good for them. I don't think Lich really did too much for them. It just kind of helped them in the laning phase. It was an interesting pick. I'm not exactly sure why they picked it. I think they just wanted to have a better laning phase so that way they could maybe push towers a bit earlier with that little bit of an advantage they would have from having a Lich on their side. Also, Lich could go mech, and that could maybe free up some space for Doom or Death Prophet to go some different items. My last ban is Morphling. This is just a hero they used a lot with Lich as well. A lot of Chinese teams like DK, Newbee, LGD were picking Lich Enigma, or I mean Lich Morphling, with like their first 2 picks. And so when we saw Lich, I just figured, let's just get rid of Morphling just in case that's kind of what they're going for. And that could have been what they were going for. Not exactly sure. So we needed my hero last. There's a support. Their ban was Ancient Apparition, which was an okay ban. I think they were just trying to make sure that they could push. Probably not what I was going to go for, but still a pretty good ban. I went with Mirana with my last pick here for myself as a support. This hero is kind of good against like a Lich support because Mirana is able to roam around and try and set up kills, and Lich can't really react too well. Also, Shaker as a melee support is the only one that I have to really worry about, and he probably wouldn't be able to kill me because I could always just leap over the fissure, worst case scenario. Their last pick was Nyax, or Lifestealer. I really don't think this hero is very good, and I was surprised that he was able to get anything done this game. It's probably through fault of our own. But he is pretty good against Tidehunter. He's good against Brewmaster. He's not the best against Naga or Mirana. But in general, he's just kind of like he's just a hero that doesn't really fit in the metagame. That being said, Newbee picked it a couple times this tournament, and they had some success with it. So I can understand why they maybe, it's more of like a comfort hero for them. And I think they kind of made it work. They actually did a dual lanes with Lich and Lifestealer mid, and it didn't really work too well. They're shutting down Naga, so it's kind of unfortunate that we lost this game. We probably should have won.
So for game 2 against Newbee, we were pretty tilted going into it. We lost the first game in a game that we probably should have won. We were pretty confident that we were going to win the game, and we made a couple of really big mistakes that costed us a lot. But either way, we had like a 5 or 10 minute break like you do between any matches, and then we had to get back into it for game 2. So for game 2, we really wanted to make sure that we got our signature heroes. If we were going to lose, we wanted to lose with heroes that we were comfortable with, saying, hey, they beat, our best. So for our first pick, we went with Zai's Enigma, which is something most teams were actually banned against us, but they decided to ban Razor and Lycan instead. Those are just heroes that they were more afraid of than, I guess, the Enigma. I think they definitely had something planned to beat the Enigma, which was pretty smart by them to have that planned. Probably something that they thought up of in their like 3 or 4 hour break in between their matches, when we actually only had about 10 to 15 minutes between our best of 3 against DK and then this one, which I thought it was pretty unfair, but I guess that's just how it goes. So we got Storm Spirit in the first phase, which is something that we didn't normally do, but we liked Storm Spirit against both Brewmaster and Nature's Prophet. Also, most teams are banning Storm Spirit because it's one of Mason's best heroes during the second phase, so we decided not to give them that chance and then just pick it first 2. Into the second picking phase, we tried to eliminate heroes that would allow them to 5-man. So we got rid of both Luna and Rasta. Those were just those 2 heroes in combination with Brewmaster and Nature's Prophet would basically mean that they would never have to leave a lane, and they could just go 5-man into our base, very, very early, and we'd be forced to have some sort of an engagement that we probably wouldn't be prepared for.
Evil geniuses turn to bad.
So into the second phase, they first picked Lich, which was a good hero against Enigma. Not what we really expected, but either way, we were just like, okay, so they have Chain Frost for Black Hole. That's fine. It's not. We don't just pick Enigma for the Black Hole, so it's totally cool.
Newbies turn to ban. Reserve time. Newbies turn to ban.
We followed that up with a Beastmaster pick, which is not too uncommon for us, but a little uncommon. We had this kind of strategy or idea where we would have total map control through vision, and that way Storm Spirit would be able to control or farm their jungle while the rest of us farmed our jungle or the other lanes. So Storm Spirit could play really aggressively and then always have the backup vision of the Hawk to kind of protect him and let him get greedier than he normally would be able to. They took Spectre, so they secured themselves some late game with this hero. Spectre is a pretty good hero who, for when a team gets a lot of early tower gold, and then they can always depend on Spectre to fall back on into the late game. So seeing that they picked this Spectre, we wanted to make sure that we had a strong early game to kind of punish it. So we took up the Dragon Knight, who laned pretty, he lanes okay against Panda, and he can help us secure a couple tower kills to gain that map control that we would need in order to start throwing Hawks into different locations and allowing Storm Spirit to play more aggressive. With their last pick, they took Doom, which was a little surprising. It actually ended up being a banana jungle Doom, who bought boots first and ran at our Enigma in the jungle, which was really smart of them. Not only does Doom have a couple of innate counters to Enigma, he has the Doom, the level death, both to cancel, and then he can also devour a Troll Trapper who can ensnare Enigma through BKB and stop the black hole that way. But also he just ran at Enigma during the laning phase, which really shut down his farm.
10 seconds.
For our last pick, we went with Wraith King, which was, in hindsight, probably a mistake. We thought just having this hero with multiple cycles would allow us to, just team fight better, and then me playing a greedy 5 like this, and I could actually, be effective in team fights. I have my aura, and I would have the reincarnation slow during team fights, which would be really useful against their heroes. Unfortunately, my laning phase went really poorly when I got first blooded, and the game kind of took a turn from there. But that was at least the idea. Is they had they had Panda ult, Doom, Spectre ult, Lich ult, and Furion ult. So if we could just survive through all those spells, then we would be good to go and good to fight.
So so we were in the loser bracket final against Vici. This is a team that we handled actually really well in the group stage. We also played them at the summit and did really well. And just in general, we weren't really that scared of them. We just knew that they did this all-in push strategies, and we thought, we were apt enough at being able to beat it. So going to the draft, they banned Tinker and Tide every game this tournament. One thing that's interesting about Vici is that they always took first pick over everything else. So we actually had Dire for all 3 games, and they had first pick for all 3 games. So they banned Tinker Tide every game in this series. We banned Lycan in the first game, and then we also banned Lich. This was because we banned Lich because a lot of the Chinese teams are a newbie in game 2 against us. When we had Enigma, they did Lich and Doom together, and they had their Lich roam around and chase the Enigma through the jungle, as well as they had the Lich ultimate as well to stop the Enigma's black hole. Their Doom also kept a troll trap net in order to stop BKB black holes as well throughout the game. So it was very hard. They made it very hard for Enigma. So we decided to ban Lich against Vici because we figured they might try and copy something that Newbee did, because they had such great success against us in that game too. So Vici first picked Razor, something a lot of teams were doing, including us. They're very confident with Super playing it. We reacted with Brewmaster and Rasta. Just pretty good heroes. With Rasta, we can abuse Roshan. Mason Panda is always very good. They picked Furion. They did a lot of safe lane Furion for Sylar, so that way they could force early towers and do their whole little 5-man charade. They banned Naga because they saw how well we played it, we lost to Newbee with it, but we probably should have won. I think they recognized that. Ben Venomancer, just an ROTK hero I was a little worried about. It's also pretty good against Panda and Rasta because it can stop their blinks with the wards. They banned Enigma. I didn't take it first too because I thought they would be ready for it, and we kind of wanted these heroes instead. We banned Pugna last, just another hero that they like to 5-man towers with and push early. My first pick out of the second phase was Sand King. In hindsight, this was probably one of my worst picks of the tournament. We weren't really able to fight early, and our safe lane was incredibly weak. We actually did a Brewmaster, Rasta, Sand King tri-lane, and we actually had no chance at all of defending our Brewmaster and being able to farm the lane. So that was a really bad pick. Rasta, Sand King in general is way too weak of a support duo when you know that, or when it's possible for your enemies to aggressive tri-lane. With their third pick, they took Rubik. It's pretty good against Rasta and Brewmaster and Sand King as well. Also, it allows them to kind of roam around the map and have like a setup stun. With our fourth pick, we took TA. This was also probably not our best pick just because TA does so poorly against Razor. But at this tournament, we really struggled with our hero pool, and we weren't really too confident in too many heroes for the safe lane and the mid lane. We kind of fell into this trap where we weren't really confident in like being creative or trying new things. So we just took like the comfort pick in TA, and we hoped that the laning phase would and pretty early in TA would be able to catch up after the poor laning phase that we expected him to have against Razor. They fourth picked Leshrac. It's just another hero that can push early. Also, it's pretty good for roaming around with Rubik. You can get pretty easy setup stun into Split Earth. My last ban was Doom, just a ROTK hero I didn't want to play against. They banned Void. They didn't want Universe to have that. Also, they were going aggressive tri lane, so they wanted to be able to stop that. My last pick was Darkseer, and this was kind of a rare pick for us. We didn't pick this too much, but we used to play it a lot actually. And the idea behind this was, by picking Darkseer, our idea was to keep them from roaming around. Like we were hoping that because we had Darkseer that they would stay in their safe lane and try and keep Darkseer out and force them to have not get too much. They actually didn't do this. They actually went aggressive tri lane anyways, and Darkseer was kind of free farming on Furion, but I think Universe misplayed and ended up dying against Furion, which was really, really bad for us. And their support duo was actually able to stay top and shut down our safe lane. So I knew when we had the weak supports of Sand Shadow Shaman that they would be able to come aggressive on us. So I picked Darkseer in order to hopefully force them to not come aggressive. And things just didn't work out at all. Their last pick was Centaur, and this was a pretty good pick. It made their aggressive tri lane very strong with the additional stun and damage from Centaur. And he was also able to stay up there alone because Ross said it wasn't the best at forcing him out when they have the two supports running around. So we got pretty outdrafted this game, I think, and we lost really badly. This is Vici. We just got demolished game 1. It was really ugly. So it's the same picks, like I said before. We had second pick on Dire. They had first pick on Radiant. They banned the same things. We decided to switch it up. We said Razor was way too much of a problem. Let's just not worry about the Lich and just maybe not focus on getting Enigma too early. They first picked Furion, and this was a little surprising, but we thought maybe they would do it. I think we actually said that, hey, if they're not going to first pick Furion, we're definitely going to take it. So we actually do end up going with Enigma just because we wanted to be able to split push. So if they were going to all in our safe lane towers and our mid tower with the Furion Treants, we'd say, hey, let's at least get a tower out of it. Also, Enigma lets us get up a quick early mech, so that way maybe we could actually fight their push. We took Void pretty early in this draft just because we really, really like it against Furion. It's also pretty good at stopping pushes because you can just fight and crush them. They took the Doom, so their picks were pretty much their picks are very similar to what Newbee drafted against us in the winner bracket. Doom is pretty good against Enigma, and I think that was kind of their idea here. They banned Panda, and I immediately banned Lich. I just didn't want to have to deal with the Lich-Doom combo that Newbee ran earlier, and I think that they probably would have gone for that if they could. Just so this way, Enigma only has to worry about the Doom for the Black Hole once he has his BKB. They banned Mirana as well. It's just a Mason comfort hero. My last ban was for the second phase was Rubik. Once again, it's pretty good against Enigma and Void. You can steal the ultimates pretty easily, and I just didn't want them to be able to roam around like they did last game with those heroes. I then took Weaver as one of Mason's best heroes, and we knew that if he was playing on this hero, he'd probably get a lot of farm and be able to carry eventually. They picked the Vengeful Spirit. This was so that they could deal with the Enigma Black Hole. They just wanted another tool other than Doom to help deal with it. I took Alchemist for myself. I thought this would be a really good hero to help stop the deep push. Also, I could get a pretty early medallion and do Roshan. Also, I could use my medallion to lower the already low armor of Doom in order to bring him down pretty easily. We also had the idea of maybe putting Alchemist mid this game for our tour, and when we selected the hero, we actually discussed that if they did pick Ancient Apparition, we would switch it to a support Alchemist, so Alchemist wouldn't be in that that major of a role, and him getting AA blasted wouldn't be the end of the world for Alchemist. Our last ban was the Death Prophet. It's just a hero they like to play a lot, and they were already gearing up for this whole all-in push strategy. They banned OD. They just didn't want their mid hero, whatever they were going to pick, to line up against OD, and I think they ended up picking Dragon Knight, and OD kind of does really well against Dragon Knight because he stops Dragon Knight's ability to cast Flame Breath by reducing his intelligence. So our last pick was Viper. We picked this hero against IG during the group stage, and we had the worst game ever against them. But I talked to Artur and I said, hey, this is the best pick. Are you confident playing this hero? And he said, yes, pick it. So we did it. And the hero is actually really good here. He's a very strong mid laner. His corrosive skin is very good against Ancient Apparitions, Ice Blast, and Furion's ultimate, and just all the magic damage that they would have in this game. The last pick was the Dragonite. They were just looking to push, as they always do, and I think we had a pretty good lineup in order to defend and actually fight, and so it actually worked out really well. I was very pleased with this draft. Weaver could have been maybe a little more interchangeable, but he allowed us to have some sort of split push, so that way we could kind of spread the map and hopefully stop them from all-in pushing constantly. Game 3 versus Vici. We won Game 2. We were pretty happy, and we were looking to do the same thing again this game. So drafting-wise, they banned Tinker Tide again. We banned Razor and Lycan, same thing as before. I actually, sometimes I do this. I switch up my bans. Like in every other game, I ban Lycan first, and then I ban something else. This game, I banned Razor first. That way, maybe they think that, you know, maybe I'm not going to ban Lycan, but yeah, it didn't matter. I ended up banning Lycan second anyways, and their bans didn't change at all. So I just figured I would just try that and see what happened. So they picked Furion first again, just like in Game 2. They were confident what we had, or they had, and we were confident what we had. So we just copied and went with Void Enigma as well. They actually went with Venomancer this time instead of Doom, and they just didn't. They just realized that we were really confident playing as a Doom, and we kind of knew how to deal with it. So they decided to switch it up. Once again, I banned Lich. They banned Venomancer because with Furion and or they banned Weaver because they had Furion and Venomancer, or yeah, Furion and Venomancer, two heroes that don't do too well against Weaver because his ability to just Sakuchi and go at max move speed and get away from all the poison damage, and Furion doesn't have too much lockdown until he gets up an Orchid or a Hex. I banned the Lich because I didn't want to have to deal with the Black Hole Chain Frost kind of issue. They banned Viper, just a hero we played in the last game and did really well with. It works pretty well with Void. You get, you know, the Chronosphere, and Viper gets to, you know, pump out all of his damage during that. I banned Death Prophet. I think I did the same during Game 2, and just another hero that moves really confident, or I'm sorry, Super is really confident on. So the third pick was a pretty heated debate. I was telling my team that I really wanted to pick Timbersaw in this draft. It does really well against Furion and Venomancer. It lanes incredibly well against Furion, and they also don't, and Venomancer doesn't provide the lockdown that is needed in order to shut down a Timbersaw. Also, all the little Veno wards, when they hit Timbersaw, he gets a ton of armor from his reactive armor and health regen, and he's just a really tanky hero that can just deal with these pushes incredibly well when there's not very much to shut him down. So I actually went with Mirana just because it could follow up on Void's ultimate, and it would be a good laner in case they came aggro. There was definitely a lot of debate going on during this draft, and that's why it was so controversial, I think. I took the Timbersaw with my fourth pick. That's just what I wanted, and I knew Timbersaw was a good pick here, but Mirana was a little sketchy. They went with the Leshrac that they did in Game 1, but instead of Rubik, they have Shadow Demon this time. I think it's just because, I'm not sure why they went with Rubik or Shadow Demon instead of Rubik, but they kind of fill the same role. My last ban was Centaur. I just didn't want to have to deal with the same thing I dealt with the other game. They could easily put Venomancer mid. That's something that they've done before. And their last ban was Naga because they actually only have one stun in Leshrac. So being able to Naga could kind of split push and sleep as she wanted. And my last pick was Alchemist. This is just, I had the same idea. We actually wanted to go mid this game and get a lot of points in the assets pretty early on in order to stop them from pushing. The last pick was the Dragonite, just another hero. The Super only played like a couple heroes this tournament, and Dragonite was one of his best, so they just went with that, and they pushed all of our towers down and we lost.